picture of Steve with the wearing the umbrella like that. You've got to come over here, we've got to get a picture. But put your head up a bit so it's very clear that you have that. Put your head up a bit.
I purposely
or maybe
didn't
go
get
in, go in low. Go in low, Tony.
Just let me get it.
Go in low.
Oh.
The camera may be a bit in the way.
He's hiding behind the camera.
No, don't. Yeah, you've got to see the band around your head. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, that's the angle. Hold it, hold it.
It looks strange, does it?
Hang on, I want the town hall in the background.
I can't see myself.
Okay. Beautiful.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody.
Oh, you guys are really
Great to be in Sydney. These lovely autumn days with some semblance of freedom, unlike poor Julian Assange, who has effectively been detained for over 14 years. He's been in Belmarsh prison for, I think, about 4 years, mainly in solitary confinement, which has been deemed to be torture by the UN Rapporteur on Torture and various other humanitarian organisations. I don't know how many of you believe we did the right thing invading Afghanistan, but if you believe we did, you might believe that Assange did the wrong thing, or Bradley Manning, Chelsea Manning did the wrong thing, releasing information on war crimes committed by the Americans there. It's very important to note that Assange was not the first person to put the information that he's been pursued over on the internet. It was a Guardian journalist, not Julian Assange. So why have they got Julian Assange in prison for releasing information to the public that at the time, prior to it being released to the public by someone else, he was working with 20 professional journalists to redact any names that might cause harm. As it happens, very senior people in the military have testified that nobody was harmed by the WikiLeaks cables in any case. But the political establishment was embarrassed because they did a lot of very bad things, invading Afghanistan and Iraq, and they didn't want the people to know the truth. But sadly, if I'm right in assuming we did not do the right thing invading Iraq and invading Afghanistan, it's important that Assange and other fellow journalists come out and communicate to the public exactly what the truth of the matter is, so we, the public, have a choice in what our so-called democratic governments do. But all of these decisions are not democratic at all. They're made in secret meetings with politicians that get money donated to them by vested interests that make vast profits out of war. The mainstream media is effectively the mouthpiece, propaganda arm of the government, and people get told fairy stories all their life and they have a tendency to believe it. But it's important for people to question what they believe. I question what I believe, and if there's anybody out there that thinks what I'm saying is wrong, or that Assange should be in prison, please come and speak. You'll be allowed to speak freely. We'd love to hear it. We might be overlooking something, but I don't think we are. I think it's important, before we go into any of these damn fool wars, that the public get a choice, not a handful of politicians in a secret meeting who might be offered vast sums of money by companies and jobs by companies that make billions, tens of billions, scores of billions, hundreds of billions out of these military campaigns and get a lot of innocent people killed, and worse still, make us enemies that we'll possibly never be able to resolve enmity with. It's bad for business. It's bad for the countries that have wars thrust upon them, and bad for the countries that do the military intervention. It's bad for everybody. And that's why we have universal human rights. And that's the real purpose of our meeting here, is firstly to get Assange free because he stands for his human rights and we stand for his human rights because they are our human rights. And these universal human rights were attested to by all the countries in the world. We have a right to free speech. We have a right to freedom of association, free communication. We have a right to work. We have a right to informed medical consent. We have a right to travel. These are things we're seeing removed, these rights removed by executive handfuls of politicians that their party gets millions and millions in donations, and they are effectively promoted by the mainstream media when they are not telling us the whole truth. Maybe what they tell us is the truth in part, but it's what they're not telling us that really matters, because they can frame a story to make a person look innocent, or they can frame a story to make a person look guilty just by omitting the truth. So that's why we're here. We've been here for 230 weeks this week, and we're beseeching the Australian people to put pressure on their politicians to get off their tail, get off their derriere, that's French, and get Assange out of prison unless they can prove he's done something wrong, which they can't. They've had 14 years to table evidence of wrongdoing, and they haven't done it, so they're just keeping him in prison. He's not even out on bail. He's in a supermax prison, in solitary confinement. For what? For telling us the truth about what our government's doing. Of course they want him in jail. In fact, there are many people who believe they want him dead. And it's very reliably been reported, in my opinion, that the CIA was plotting to kill him in the Ecuadorian embassy already. So it's really a matter of Assange's human rights and our human rights. And if we don't stand up for his human rights, we are selling ourselves and our children down the river. They will be living in a dictatorship. That's why we have human rights, to protect us from despotic governments, dictatorships and tyrants that would kill us, disappear us if we say anything to criticize them. This has been the evolution of humanity and law and justice for thousands of years, and it's absolutely critical we all stand fast in standing up for it. And if they're able to take Assange to America without providing any evidence of any wrongdoing, well then they'll be doing it to you and your children before long. So if you don't stand up for human rights and Assange's freedom, you can kiss your own goodbye. That's the message from me. If anyone thinks I'm wrong, I'd be very happy to listen to them. I don't pretend to be right about everything all the time. Anyway, I'd like to pass you over to a friend of mine who might say a few words on behalf of all of us. 230 weeks we've been here calling on the government to actually get Assange out of prison, or tell the Americans, give us the evidence or let him go.
Welcome to the 230th Julian Assange Sydney Town Hall gathering. The mainstream media create the illusion of a world populated by superficially well-manicured individuals who appear to agree with the basic mainstream narratives that support the aims of the parasite class, the people who have corrupted democracy and our systems of governance. They never discuss the fact that Julian Assange is being tortured to death in a British jail for publishing important public interest truth. Men and women come to Sydney Town Hall every Friday to help free others from the shackles of mainstream propaganda. We are here to help people wake up to the lies they are told every day by governments and their media. We are here to help people realise the truth about Julian Assange, who is completely innocent and the key to everyone's freedom. Freeing Julian Assange is at the very heart of what we need to achieve. We need everyone truthfully informed and willing to hold our governments and corporations to account. When we can show our unity, governments will be compelled to do what we want. Unity comes from communicating the truth. We need to inform each other so that we can all know the truth. Those who don't like the truth are desperate to suppress it, which is why journalists like Julian Assange are being tortured to death. It's not good enough to simply pass the buck and blame politicians. That's what the parasite class wants us to do. We need to demonstrate our unity to free Julian Assange. Stopping the torture and purposeful killing of Julian Assange for publishing documents that reveal the truth is something that is worthy of everyone's unity, especially when our own governments are the ones that are making it happen. We need to control the narrative. We need to create and use our narrative, not theirs. This week we were subjected to hearing that the US government issued a diplomatic note offering so-called assurances to the UK government. One assurance was that the US would not seek the death penalty for Julian. And the other assurance, better described by Stella Assange as a non-assurance, said that Julian may request that the US court respect his human right to free speech, but that the court would be under no obligation to comply with such a request. Given that the court is in the Eastern District of Virginia, where no national security defendant has ever won a case, the chances of Julian having his free speech rights respected would be zero. Any reasonable human being will take this as a failure by the US to provide this necessary diplomatic free speech assurance. Joe Lauria of Consortium News wrote, quote, "The US Department of Justice is legally restricted to assure a free speech guarantee to Assange, equivalent to Article 10 of the European Convention, which the British court is bound to follow. But without that assurance, Assange should be freed, according to a British Crown Prosecution Service comment on extraditions. On the face of it, Julian Assange should now be free to leave Belmarsh prison. But we must remember that deception is the name of the game. Julian will remain in Belmarsh prison until the 20th of May, when yet another hearing will be held to decide whether or not the US assurances will be accepted. Meanwhile, Julian will continue being subjected to the torturous solitary confinement that has undoubtedly had a severe adverse impact on his health. We need our governments to work for us and not for the parasite class. But they will keep doing what they do until we stand up and hold them to account. Our job is to keep fighting for justice for Julian. Julian's freedom is our freedom. Help free Julian Assange. Free! Free! Julian Assange! Free! Free! Julian Assange!
Hell yeah!
Free!
Free!
Free! Julian Assange! Thank you.
Should have been out fucking 10 years ago.
Yeah, I'd just like to add one little comment, very small comment to that. The whole notion is with this that they won't seek the death penalty,
Oh, well, that's great.
right? The implication is what he has done is something that, well, may be worthy of the death penalty.
But we're not going to say
This is a phenomenal smear when you stop and think about it, isn't it?
Yeah.
They're very good at smearing and doing character assassination. They always play the man. When they can't win the argument, they play the man. And as soon as they play the man, you know, they've lost the argument.
I agree with that.
The other point is
I
that
completely agree with that.
they openly stated that he should be droned. I think that was what Hillary said.
Why waste the drone?
And the reality is that the CIA drew up plans to have him assassinated.
They would never.
the truth about everything. So that, and we're being lied to by our government, is why we haven't got what we haven't really got democracy. We need democracy, and Julian is what can give us democracy. Well, he could, but the thing is, they've outlawed him. So what we have to do is unite. It's the only possible way to solve the problem. They're not going to solve it for us. We have to solve it. We have to unite. Because, I mean, democracy is meant to be for the people. It's the people, what the people want. But if they just do whatever they want, what they do, and we know it because of Julian's work and others. The only option is for people to unite, but they're apathetic.
And then we'll make sure there's a maybe in front of it, not behind it. Sorry, I'll let one second.
Well, you can make it not corrupted by the people saying no, and what we want is oversight. So when we don't want this silly Senate thing, we want representatives of the people, which are not part of the party. We don't want that bloody party. They're the same parties that are in the Senate. It should be randomly selected individuals like a jury that we can all be called upon, paid well so that we can do it, but we're only there for a short time to oversee the bloody laws that they keep pushing through, like digital ID and all this, which they didn't bloody even discuss it, let alone go against it.
We are all Assange.